Hello, and thank you for taking some time out of your day to prioritize mental health and the mental health needs of our community. My name is Dr. Jennifer Whitney, and I'm the director of the Counseling Center here on campus. The Chancellor's use of shared fate is the perfect phrase to frame how we think about caring for ourselves, our own mental health and well-being, and how that is connected to the mental health and well-being of our students. I'm going to be using the word we a lot in our time together today. And when I say we, I'm talking about us as staff members and faculty, as well as our students, everyone in our community. So what I'm saying applies just as much to you as it does to our students and vice versa. Typically, when I talk with faculty and staff, I focus specifically on supporting students in distress. But COVID-19 has turned our world inside out and upside down. When I used to talk about supporting students in distress, I had just a single slide on self-care. But things have changed. Our world has changed and our work has changed. I will still talk to you today about how to identify common signs of a student in distress and how to talk with a student in distress, and how and where to refer a student in need. We know that mental health has a significant impact on academic success. 64% of young adults who are no longer in college are not attending because of a mental health related reason. But instead of focusing just on our students, I'm going to weave together taking care of ourselves and of others. I'm going to talk about the we of our community. For those of us who have flown on a plane, or perhaps if we haven't, we have seen on TV the speech where the flight attendant instructs that passengers, in the event of a decompression, an oxygen mask will automatically appear in front of you. And then they tell you how to put that mask on properly. And then they say, if you're traveling with a child or someone who requires assistance, secure your mask first, and then assist the other person. This is a beautiful analogy for caring for our own mental health so that we can care for those around us. And as a mom of 3 kiddos, I'm always caught by this statement and how hard these directions are to follow. As helpers, as supporting, caring humans, it often seems right and natural to put others first. And also, as a mom of those 3 kiddos, I know that if I'm not okay, if on that plane I don't put on my oxygen mask first, I cannot help, protect, support my children. It is crucial. It is not a luxury. It is crucial that we take care of ourselves. The other thing about taking care of ourselves, paying attention to our own mental health and well-being, is that unlike garnering expertise in a content area like biology or advising, or gaining skills and competence in your position at the university, when we work to increase our training in mental health, in wellness, or supporting students in distress, there is a component of the work that is experiential. We must develop not just knowledge and skills, but awareness and insight. We must pay attention to our own mental health, our own well-being, and our own insight and awareness of ourselves matters. That is part of what makes this work so difficult, and part of what can make it so difficult to support students in distress. If we struggle with anxiety and it is not well managed, being around an anxious student is really hard. It heightens our own anxiety. And the increase in the volume and intensity of students and their stories of distress affects our own mental health and well-being. And right now, in this time of social uprising, of the presence and legacy of 400 plus years of racial violence, of a public health crisis, taking care of our own mental health putting our own oxygen masks before helping someone else who requires assistance is crucial. Now, this does not mean that you have to be a perfectly mentally healthy, well human being, whatever that means, because perfection is an illusion and it is a tool of oppression. But having some working knowledge of self-care and being able to check in on your own mental health and have awareness of where you are at is necessary. I think one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves and others is recognizing that it's natural to feel stress, anxiety, grief, and sadness during and after a disaster or a trauma. There is a psychological toll as a result of our current new normal. Many of us are working and living online. We are missing human contact and our regular rituals and routines. We're uncertain about the new rituals and routines we have developed since campus closed and how they might change come August. We, again, staff members and students alike, often tell ourselves that our reaction to stress and crises is not normal, or at the very least that it should be different, which actually causes us more stress and more anxiety. The reality is most likely that our reactions are very normal under our circumstances, and those are very abnormal circumstances. Our current reality, the COVID-19 pandemic, the pandemic of racism and racial violence, is a worldwide trauma, a shared crisis, although certainly not experienced or shared equally. And the feelings we are having aren't just about what has happened or even what is currently happening. They are mired in anticipatory grief of what is still yet to come. But again, I'm here to tell you today that what we are experiencing is normal. A colleague of mine shared in her words feeling like her brain is scrambled eggs. For me, it feels like pregnancy brain felt when I accidentally set my blender on fire because I sat it on the stovetop and then turned on the burner. And in the midst of all these feelings and the COVID brain fog, we are also working really hard to learn so many new things, new technologies, for example, and to think about our work and our world in new and creative ways. And we are being bombarded by new and ever-changing information that is filled with uncertainty. And whether it is learning how to live an anti-racist life and enact change in our community, or it's just figuring out how to change the background in your Zoom, this is all really hard. These symptoms that you see here on this slide, the brain fog and the fatigue and forgetfulness or mindlessness, are normal. And I hope that seeing them here in print allows you to be more gentle with yourself and less judgmental of where you are at and how you are coping. I also hope it provides space to extend generosity to those around us. None of us is at our best right now, and all of us are doing our best. But as I shared earlier, while this is a worldwide trauma, a shared crisis, it certainly is not experienced or shared equally. For marginalized and oppressed folks, the pandemic of racism intersects with our public health crisis. We know that COVID-19 is disproportionately affecting communities of color and shining a glaring spotlight on our health disparities. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, okay, Dr. Whitney, Jen, Jennifer, but not Jenny. Thanks for acknowledging that this is normal, for highlighting all this really difficult, painful stuff. Now tell me how to change it. Tell me how to make all these icky feelings that I don't like go away. Tell me how to make this better for our students. Well, If you're familiar with the children's board book, Going on a Bear Hunt, we can't go over it and we can't go under it. We've got to go through it. And that is such an important reminder for each of us and for our students. When they come to us in distress and they want things to be better and we want to fix things for them, we can't go over it and we can't go under it. But there are tools we can all use as we move through this. Being thoughtful and intentional and reflective can help us to move through and ride these emotions instead of fighting or judging them. Get outside. We need the vitamin D from the sunshine. Exercise, but don't pressure yourself about it. Being active and moving your body should be enjoyable, not guilt-ridden or like punishment. Try to eat a variety of foods that fuel your body, but again, don't pressure yourself. Do what you can and keep it simple. I love eating a delicious spinach and strawberry salad, which sounds so easy to make, but I only eat it if someone else makes it for me. Know that emotions will run high and patience will run low when people spend a whole heck of a lot of time together. In my house, at least one of us cries daily, and it is not always the children. Throughout your day, pause and breathe. Pause and breathe before you check your email. Pause and breathe before you take a drink of water. Pause and breathe before you turn out the light and leave a room. Pause and breathe and repeat. And after you have practiced pausing and breathing, move on to pausing and noticing. Check in with yourself. Notice how your forehead, your eyes, and your jaw are feeling. Are they loose or clenched? Notice how you're holding your neck and your shoulders. Are you scrunched up? How close are your shoulders to your ears? Are you slouched over or straight up with your heart forward and open? Check in with your heart and your chest. Is it wide open or is it closed and tight and achy? What's going on with your arms and your legs, your hips and your hands and your feet? Notice your breath. Is it shallow and quick? Is it deep and slow? And just like pausing and breathing, do this often. Set an alarm on your phone for the top of every hour and check in with yourself. What do you need? Would stepping outside be helpful? Would a glass of water be helpful? Pause, breathe, and notice. Listen and repeat. The more you practice this, the more automatic it will become. And the more you practice this, the easier it will be to share this with someone else who is struggling, whether it's a coworker or a student. Pause, breathe, notice, and take a beat before taking the next step. Calm your nervous system. We are all working out of trauma brain right now. We are all operating out of fight, flight, or freeze. We have got to find ways to calm our sympathetic nervous system so that we can activate our parasympathetic nervous system so that we can balance our feeling and emotions with our thinking. I hope so far there have been some nuggets that you can take away from our time together to care for yourself and in turn to care for each other and our students. But I have saved some of my personal favorites for the end here. You might want to get out a pen and paper if you haven't already been furiously taking notes on all my words of wisdom. But this personal favorite nugget of mine is comparison is the thief of joy. I say this to at least one person once a day. And in the age of social media, I really could just say it to about every person, including myself, every day. Many of you have probably seen what's on the screen posted somewhere on social media. That idea that you should come out of this with a new skill, you should tackle those projects you haven't had time for before, you should create a color-coded homeschool schedule for your children. You should try new recipes and get back to cooking. You should learn a language. Should, should. In the biz, not showbiz, therapy biz, we call that shoulding on yourself. It is a form of emotionally and cognitively pooping on yourself. It's not pretty when you put it that way. As we move through this time of uncertainty, keep things simple. Maybe learning to quilt is possible for you, but maybe getting up and showering each morning is where it is at, and it's an important routine for you to maintain. Without a doubt, growth will happen whether we want it to or not during this time. I shared earlier that around the stages of grief, and the last stage of grief, although it's not a linear process, is acceptance, in which we make meaning of trauma and loss. And there's something also called post-traumatic growth, in which people report after a trauma that they have improvements in their relationships, they have a greater appreciation for life, they have a greater sense of their personal strength and their ability to cope with a crisis. And eventually, the hope is that we can all find meaning in our struggle. But it's okay if you're not there yet, and it's okay if you don't. Now here's another nugget that I'd like to leave at your feet. It's up to you if you pick it up. Focus only on those things we can control. We call it the internal locus of control. A lot of times we spend all or so much of our energy outside of the circle. Bummer is you can't control any of those things. So stop and focus on those things that you can. Now, as I said several times earlier, what we're experiencing is normal, but that doesn't mean that we have to experience it alone, or that if we just exercise, we can handle it. Pay attention to your feelings and emotions. Understand that they are normal. You can't get rid of them, and you don't want to. They're useful information, and they're helpful tools as you move through them. Reach out to a mental health professional anytime you think you need to, or if it would help you. Know and use your resources. Now, these resources are just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many resources on our campus. It's one of the things that I love about UNCG. And that is wonderful, and it can be overwhelming that there are so many resources. I always like to tell folks, if you just remember one resource, think of the Dean of Students as a one-stop shop. The Dean of Students really is the hub of our culture of care, and will connect you exactly where you need to be for whatever your concern may be. I challenge each of us, if we've not already done it, to take the online Ask, Listen, Refer training. It is a very brief 20 to 30 minute training designed to prevent suicide and increase helping skills. And if you are teaching a course anywhere on campus, I suggest that you include this syllabus statement. It sets the tone of your classroom, and it lets your students know up front that the mental health and well-being of our community is a priority for our campus. And there are lots of resources specific to mental health and our present reality during COVID if you go to the Counseling Center website. We've gathered some great resources that are useful for any and all of us. And last but not least, do not forget that we have access to ComPsych as a resource for caring for our own mental health as staff and faculty. Thank you very much for all of your time and attention today, as well as the ways in which you're prioritizing your mental health and the mental health of our community. Be well and be safe.